Welcome back, everybody. You guys are listening to the Down to the Wire podcast. I am Brian Costa, and it is Friday night. We have a lot to talk about regarding the NFL draft and some other stuff in Major League Baseball. First of all, I want to welcome into the show a special guest, Pat Edwards. Pat, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing all right. How about you, Brian?
Doing good, man. Obviously, I want to get you on the show, and for anyone who has ever seen Pat on Down to the Wire before, they would know that you are a very, very passionate Green Bay Packers fan.
Unfortunately.
So we'll be talking about everything going on with the Packers, especially with Aaron Rodgers in a second. But before we do, we'll get to the NFL draft in general. The first round happened last night at 8 p.m. It started off with Roger Goodell bringing out that old, musty, lazy boy from his basement. They had fans sitting on it. And just in general, it was nice to have fans back in person. It was really nice to see. Pat, what were your kind of thoughts on just like seeing like the draft happen back in person, just in general?
It was so much better.
Oh, 100%.
It's happy to actually see things happen. I love seeing people back in stadiums. I love seeing people back in drafts. I love seeing the more genuine reactions, letting the kids have a night to be drafted and celebrate. And I'm looking forward to going back to stadiums this summer.
I am too. I'm so pumped to get back to stadiums. And again, like you saw players hugging Commissioner Goodell. Goodell got up on stage, and I'll actually give him credit for this one. He was really trying to amp up the boos on that one. So like when he got up there originally, he was trying to say like, hey, like we were gone for a year. This is all you guys got. And, frankly, from Cleveland, like, the fact that they weren't booing loud enough kind of says something to Roger Goodell. So eventually it got up to the level he was hoping for. But before we talk about some of those draft picks, Pat, the reason I brought you on tonight is because right before the draft ended up happening, some breaking news from Adam Schefter came across ESPN, and it was that Aaron Rodgers reportedly wants out from the Green Bay Packers. Apparently, this is more than just a simple contract dispute. Rodgers apparently is just very frustrated with the way the Packers have handled him so far. This whole new organization with Mark Murphy. Well, Mark Murphy's been there forever, but I'm talking about, Matt LaFleur, Brian Gutekunst. All those guys there seem to be pushing Rodgers' buttons all the wrong ways. I'll kind of let you take the floor with this one.
Are you surprised? We've underachieved for the past decade. Aaron Rodgers took over as starter, immediately took us to the playoffs, immediately won a Super Bowl the year after, immediately won an MVP the year after. We haven't been back. We've had the best quarterback arguably ever. He's won 3 MVPs. In 2013, he was injured the entire year. He came back in prime time in week 17 and lit up the Bears and got us back into the playoffs. And our defense hasn't been there. The coaching hasn't been there. The receiving core hasn't been there. The one constant is that Aaron Rodgers has performed. And management, coaching, players haven't followed suit. And they're wasting away a Hall of Famer's career. The one important thing to note is that he's not gone. This isn't a done deal. He's out of Green Bay. But for the past 3 years, that's all he's been saying, is he wants an improvement. And he's gotten it. But there are some very notable gaps that could be closed that could let us compete in the Super Bowl, try to win the Super Bowl, instead of going out 6-9-1 in 2018, getting blown out in the NFC Championship game in 2019, and fixing nothing and expecting a different result in 2020. It hurts, but anything he's tried to do is fallen on deaf ears, and the greatest quarterback of all time only has one Super Bowl in his career to show for it.
Yeah, no, Rodgers has definitely, thank you for that, for taking the floor with that there. Obviously, Rodgers' career, has been kind of just like, what the Packers have done, with this recent regime has been just disgraceful the way they've been treating Rodgers so far. 9 of the past 10 drafts, you go defense, and, the only offensive guy you do draft is his replacement in Jordan Love. Obviously Rodgers right now is very, very, angry with this organization. Apparently Gutekunst has come out and he says that, Rodgers is not going to be traded. Do you believe him at this point, or do you think it's likely Rodgers could be gone?
Well, it just turned down the trade with San Francisco.
That's true.
And we do control him for another 1 to 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, if you control him through 2023, you're controlling him through his age 40 season. At that point, I'd have zero problems with letting him walk. In 2007, Brett Favre took us to the NFC Championship game and lost, and we let him go. And we still competed for the past 15 years. The difference was we were competing with Aaron Rodgers. Who knows how Jordan Love is going to go?
Exactly.
I don't see him in any other uniform than a Packers uniform next year. If he retires, that's something that nobody can control except Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
But they've already declined trades. I don't see a reason why you would trade him. I wouldn't. The worst case scenario for the Packers is that he ends up in somebody else's uniform. It's not a total loss if he retires because we don't have to compete against him.
Yeah.
But obviously you want to try to keep him for at least one more year, and we'll see if that happens.
Yeah, no, I mean, I always say I don't see him retiring, especially after just winning an MVP. I mean, that's, obviously you saw guys like Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson and, other guys like that go out while they were on top. I mean, obviously Rodgers is going to be 38. So, I mean, you could throw the age thing in there. I don't see him retiring. I mean, unless he's really that fed up with the organization and nothing's going to work his way. I don't see him retiring, but I'm trying to think. I don't know. Seeing this whole thing go down though has been an absolutely crazy sight. I really have no idea what's going to come next. What's going to come next with Rodgers? Jordan Love, on the other hand, again, no clue from him either. Just a lot of some big questions I have with him. He didn't really, for a lot of games with the Packers this year, he didn't even suit up. So I'm just trying to think, like, how much faith are the Packers putting in a guy like this? And just with Rodgers in general, like, I mean, you saw the talent that he had last year. And, frankly, I could understand the idea that, for the past couple of years, the Packers were able to see what Rodgers was doing at quarterback. And, they can basically say, all right, we have our offensive issues solved because we have Aaron Rodgers. Let's go beef up the defense and let's go compete. But I feel like at least some of those years, like, you got to go invest in the draft. You got to do some other things there, which, the Packers just haven't. I mean, they've had chances at other guys in free agency. Like, they could have maybe tried to get like an Antonio Brown this year. I know that would have been probably a clown show going up there in Green Bay. But just other options you could have done in general. There were things that the Packers could have definitely done there.
Yeah. The defense has been a problem for 10 years. We just drafted a cornerback last night.
Yeah.
The cornerback is a very large part of the reason why we were not in the Super Bowl this year.
Kevin freaking King.
Kevin King. But you can't put all the blame on Kevin King because Mike Pettin called terrible defense for the third year in a row.
Yeah. And
he replaced Dom Capers, who called a very good defense for a few years and faltered, and we let him stay for 9 years. We never worried about the receiving core. Yeah. We haven't drafted a wide receiver in the first round, and I can't count how many years, but it's at least 10. Yeah. Which, again, is as long as it's been since we won a Super Bowl. Are these problems correlated? You can never say for certain, but I mean, come on now. The writing's basically on the walls, and the guys who are getting paid to pay attention have been avoiding this for years. Ted Thompson hit the nail on the head when he drafted Aaron Rodgers. A lot of people talk bad about the way he's drafted, but he did do that much, which is good enough to cover for him. Gutekunst hasn't done anything.
No, yeah.
He doesn't have a Rodgers. Besides that, he's got the same unremarkable record that Ted Thompson had, but Ted Thompson drafted the best quarterback of all time, and he got a Super Bowl out of it. We haven't done that for 10 years, and that's why we don't have any more hardware on our trophy shelf.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, a very interesting thing that I did see, about the Packers, it was trending last night. It's the fact that, like, none of, like, these, like, all-time Packers legends, you think of Starr, you think of Favre and Rodgers, they've only made it through Green Bay 16 seasons, and that was the most that they ever played as a Packer. Favre obviously went on with the Jets and the Vikes. Not really. You'd have to remind me as to what started. I'm assuming he retired, correct?
I don't believe Favre played anywhere else.
Starr, yeah.
I don't believe Starr played anywhere else. He did come back and coach.
Yeah.
I don't think he ever left the Packers organization.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about that before the show, but yeah, obviously Favre tried to, make it in Minnesota. Obviously came a game away from the Super Bowl there. Starr had his own thing. So, it would be a very interesting pattern. Rodgers would be the longest tenured quarterback in Packers history if he decides to return. So that would be a very interesting thing to see. It's just, it's just been an incredible story, lately. I mean, when this broke yesterday, it was pretty shocking news. I mean, a lot of people, saw it coming in terms of the way that, he was being treated with the organization for a while. Like, I mean, you saw him after the NFC Championship game. He came out and he said, "Listen, no one's future is certain, not even mine." And he was kind of just like, almost throwing some stuff out there, kind of letting some people hear that. It's pretty interesting though. I mean, I just the idea of Rodgers leaving, man. Like, is there any way this can be salvaged, do you think?
You got to draft well.
Yeah.
Draft well, you restructure his contract. He does have a lot of history within the organization. I think there's a chance he stays.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, he doesn't have the power to leave. That's the biggest leveraging tool. So if you restructure his contract to be able to give him a more lucrative deal, and you go out and you draft a wide receiver tonight, you got a quarterback last night. They were looking at Rashad Bateman. He got taken by the Ravens 2 slots before us. So obviously that changed at the last minute. I like that we replaced Bateman with a cornerback because that's a position that really needs improving. A lot of people weren't happy, myself included, when we re-signed Kevin King. But you got to continue to draft well. One good pick. One solid to passable pick isn't enough to keep him there. You got to do something. You got to draft well, or you got to make a trade. I've heard some people say that they should trade for Julio Jones.
That would be electric.
I don't know if that's a great idea, but if you're in win now mode in the next year or two, I see zero problem with trading for Julio Jones, depending on what you have to give up. But Gutekunst's never been known for doing anything like that, so I think there's a chance, but something's got to change on the Packers side to be able to get something done.
Yeah, Gutekunst kind of just. I mean, I don't know if this would be accurate from your kind of view, but I feel like he pisses Packers fans off in the same way that you're a Red Sox fan too. But I feel like he pisses Packers fans off in the same way that Chaim Bloom pisses off a lot of Red Sox fans, just in the way that he runs an organization. I don't know if that's an accurate statement, but at least the vibe I've heard from other Packers fans, it's just that this guy that they just don't like the way he just runs things.
To me, the difference between Chaim Bloom and Brian Gutekunst is that when we traded Mulkey, at least we got something in return. We do have Verdugo. We do have Jeter Downs, and we could very well see no return for Mulkey isn't even comparable. Very possibly the most talented player to ever pick up a football, and we could see no return for him walking.
Yeah, that's
how you would let that happen. It's like if a college were to let a straight A student call him stupid for 4 years and be surprised when he wants to drop out or transfer schools. You just don't do that.
Yeah, no, it makes no sense why it would make no sense why that would happen. For the longest time, you were always kind of animate about me when it came to Brady being in New England. You kind of were saying that, like, hey, get him out of there while he still has some value. When it came down to the trade deadline in 2017, you had, and we had traded Garoppolo to the Niners. You kind of had said to me that you thought it should have been Brady on that end. Do you think that there is not a market? Obviously there's a market for Rodgers, but is there any thought in your mind that you would be okay with the idea of getting Rodgers out of there if Love is ready to go?
I don't know about Love.
Yeah.
I wanted to be comfortable with the guy. And part of the reason, the difference I see between, I think the Patriots should have gotten rid of Brady, and I think they could have been just as successful with Garoppolo, and I have more pause with the Packers letting go of Rodgers, is I don't think that the supporting cast that Rodgers has is near as good as what Tom Brady had in New England. So you need the guy. I don't think New England needed the guy. I think they had a supporting cast to get him there. I think that in some ways I was justified in saying that when they won a Super Bowl by scoring 13 points.
Oh, no, you were justified in that. I get you. No, especially that last Super Bowl too. That was Bill's Super Bowl.
And that's the difference. Aaron Rodgers couldn't win a Super Bowl scoring a touchdown with this Packers team. Tom Brady do that with the Patriots, so you need the guy in Green Bay more than you've ever needed the guy in New England. The coach isn't Bill Belichick. The team isn't Julian Edelman, Rob Gronkowski, Stephon Gilmore. It's not those guys. It's not the same. Devin McCourty. We don't have guys of that caliber all around the team. So you need a guy under center, and Aaron Rodgers is one of the only guys that can do that and get this team as far as he's gotten them.
Yeah. And then, I know you obviously did bring up the Julio Jones trade as well. If the Packers were to go and make a move like that, I feel like it would be similar to the moves that the Pats were making in Brady's last year here when they went out and they got AB after that very tumultuous situation in Oakland where, no one was really thinking about touching AB because they thought he was too toxic of a guy. They thought that he was falling off the wagon. Then Belichick's and, typically in a regular Belichick year, that wouldn't have been the guy that you go after. Some would have said maybe just because, he is okay with doing some reclamation projects. But I think at the state AB was at that point, I think that was a very unique situation. I think if the Packers were to go out and get Julio, it would be electric for Green Bay, but it would definitely be a sign of desperation, which, frankly, you do need at this point.
Well, I don't know about sign of desperation necessarily. Obviously, it's going to be taken like that, and there is a little bit of desperation in there. Yeah. But it's also win now. I don't think Patriots fans can complain at all. Obviously, you hope that the team bounces back, but you just saw 3 Super Bowls in quick succession. Exactly. Most people don't see that in a lifetime. Mm-hmm. So they went out and won now, and they won. And there's zero regrets to be had about that. You can't say that Bill Belichick is a bad coach or a bad general manager because he didn't plan for the future, because he won now. If the Packers do that and get another ring, obviously it works. If it's desperate, sure. It doesn't matter if you win. So that's kind of the difference for me. Is it desperate? Maybe you want to win now, but you're not trying to grasp strings coming down from a Super Bowl high, trying to keep a dynasty intact. You're trying to get a group of guys that can actually win, not just stay relevant. And I think that's more of the difference.
Yeah. Going off that, and going off like what the Patriots are doing in general, they also made a selection. They also made some headlines last night. At the number 15 overall pick, the Pats ironically stayed pat and did select quarterback Mac Jones from Alabama. A lot of people were trying to figure out what they were going to do. Were they going to trade up to get a guy were they going to trade up to get a guy like Justin Fields at number 8? Were they going to stay pat? Were they going to trade back? Something that Bill Belichick constantly does. But, for whatever reason, the stars seem to align when, San Francisco took Trey Lance, and Mac Jones just continued to fall back in the draft, and he ended up going to New England at number 15 overall. Pat, you were talking to me about Mac Jones before the show. I'll let you kind of start off with that.
I love Mac Jones. I could not tell you why. I think he's good for New England. You're going from Nick Saban to Bill Belichick. You're going from basically college Bill Belichick to pro Nick Saban. The guy gets that kind of coaching. The guy was a Heisman winner because he got lifted up by his teammates, or so everybody says. And we're going to talk about what I've been saying with Tom Brady. I think he's good. I think he got lifted up by his teammates. Now we're going to get to see Mac Jones in the same situation. He's a weird guy. I don't know. I just seen articles, and his relationship with Coach Saban I thought was hilarious. Mm-hmm. So we'll get to see him under Bill Belichick now. I just want to see the guy get a shot. He was a Heisman finalist, and a lot of people don't take him seriously. And I want to see if he's actually legit or not.
I want to see him get a legit shot too. I'm very excited for the move, especially just because the Pats made it. Just the fact that we selected a quarterback in the first round. Obviously, now this is something that you've now dealt with on multiple times now as a Packers fan. Obviously, you had Rodgers back in 2005, way back then, and you had Jordan Love last year. But this is the first time the Pats have selected a quarterback in the first round since Drew Bledsoe in 1993. So the first time in my lifetime that I've seen this happen. It is pretty wild to see so far, especially just knowing that, hey, this is a first round guy. This is a guy that, most likely next season will, play some significant snaps of football. From what we heard from Bill Belichick so far, it looks like he even said this is still Cam Newton's team, which I'm just like, come on, man. Like, Cam Newton can't throw a freaking football anymore, unfortunately. But I'm very excited about it, but I also have some caution. I mean, looking at Mac Jones throughout his college days, he had some significant highlights. I mean, you think of the national championship and what he's able to do there. But I don't know. There were just some plays with him where he got uncomfortable, and I just don't know if he's going to be able to translate to the pro level at completely. I mean, some people were saying that he's the most pro-ready quarterback outside of Trevor Lawrence, who's just, who was the consensus. They were saying that, Mac Jones was the guy. If you want to start an offense today, plug him in. But I do have some concerns as to what he's going to do, as I would with any rookie quarterback, though.
Yeah. I mean, I'm excited about Mac Jones, but he's not going to the Packers. When Josh Allen got drafted, a lot of people clowned on Josh Allen. I didn't think he was going to be good. I had faith in Josh Allen. I thought he was going to be good. I wanted the Packers to draft him.
Yeah.
And I feel like I was justified in saying that because of how
I mean, yeah, he was a borderline not borderline. He was an MVP candidate last year.
Yeah, and he was a game away from the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I feel the same way about Mac Jones as I did about Josh Allen.
Mm-hmm.
But watching Josh Allen has been incredibly fun, and watching his progression from not knowing whether he could succeed in the NFL to a lot of people saying that he didn't, to now him being very near to the pinnacle of the sport. It'll be interesting with very little stake in how the Patriots do to be able to watch Mac Jones in an unbiased fashion and see whether this kid actually lives up to the hype or whether he passes some of the criticisms, and see if a Heisman candidate, national champion, guy who led a Nick Saban football team back to the top of the college football world. Let's see what he can do in the NFL. I think this could go very well or this could go very poorly. But either way, I think it's going to be very interesting to watch, especially from a non-Patriots fans' view.
Exactly. And and here's the thing, like those two extremes that you mentioned are the two extremes that so many people across the NFL have been pitching. But some people are saying like, oh, if you wanted the most Tom Brady like quarterback in the draft in terms of playing style, like this is the guy you go get. And some people are hyping this guy up, saying he's going to be the guy, and he's going to be the guy that restarts a dynasty in New England. Well, other people are saying that at best this guy is Kirk Cousins, Andy Dalton, AJ McCarron type material, and it's just like it's like that's what I think some people were saying like Kirk Cousins is like the ceiling as to what he could get to, like the very high ceiling, but it's more likely that he'd be like an Andy Dalton, AJ McCarron type. And so there are two very drastic differences in terms of what people expect out of this guy. Somebody's going to be right, somebody's going to be wrong, and again, somebody's going to be dead wrong. So that is going to be so interesting to watch. I'm hoping for the former. I'm hoping that Mac Jones can carry on the dynasty. Obviously, he will never be able to do what Tom Brady did. Frankly, I mean, just 6 Super Bowls in New England. That's it'd be impossible for if he or any other quarterback is able to repeat that in my lifetime. Hats off to him. I just don't see that happening. But frankly, I'm hoping that he can be a legitimate successor to Brady.
We'll see what happens. Do you think Steve Young is a successful quarterback?
Yeah.
Do you think Aaron Rodgers is a successful quarterback?
Yes.
And both those guys followed Joe Montana and Brett Favre, who couldn't be beaten. Listen, the Patriots went 7-9 last year with a roster that people said Bill Belichick pumped up. If they go 7-9 with a quarterback who struggled to throw the ball, and Mac Jones does end up being worth something, you guys can make the playoffs without much of a thought.
That's and especially with a revamped offense this offseason, we got Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith, Nelson Aguilar's in town, Kendrick Bourne, who I'm really excited to see. I've been saying for a long time that I think he's going to fill the Julian Edelman role here in New England very well, and he's young, and I'm really going to be excited to see what he can do. So we have a rejuvenated offense. I'm hoping that we go out in the draft tonight and we also get a receiver. So we might be competing with you for that tonight in the draft. So I'll be excited to see what happens there. But it's going to be a very interesting scene in New England. Now, what a lot of people are trying to figure out now is that since New England, seemingly has a solution at quarterback, obviously, Mac Jones will have to see what he can do, but this is essentially New England's move at quarterback. A lot of people now are trying to figure out what is Jimmy Garoppolo going to do now, because the 49ers drafted Trey Lance last night. The Pats take Mac Jones. And Jimmy Garoppolo is kind of just in purgatory right now, just saying like, well, what the hell am I worth now? Like, what am I going to do now?
I think it's funny that people think that he can only go to 2 teams. There are plenty of teams that still need a quarterback.
Oh,
and
plenty.
Justin Fields still needs a mentor. We still need to make sure that Justin Fields works out.
Mm-hmm.
And you go beyond that, and there are a few places that he can land outside of that. Obviously, Washington is having quarterback competition right now.
That would be a great position for him.
Detroit We'll see how Jared Goff does in Detroit, but there could be an opening there sooner rather than later. Derek Carr seems like he's always on his way out in Las Vegas and somehow stays every year. And the Falcons, Matt Ryan's getting old.
Mhm.
The Panthers, I don't like the Teddy Bridgewater trade. I'm not a fan of that.
The Darnold trade?
Well, they got Darnold. They traded away Teddy Bridgewater. I feel more comfortable with Teddy Bridgewater. So all of a sudden, if Sam Darnold doesn't perform better than New York, there's an opening there. I think it's ludicrous to say that there are only 2 possible landing spots because he's not the only guy in quarterback purgatory. And he's proven himself that I could take a team to a Super Bowl. How much of that was him? Sure, you can debate that, but he played in it. He's good enough to take a team to a Super Bowl. He's good enough to get out of quarterback purgatory if he lands with another team without much competition.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Teddy Bridgewater in Denver now. Just it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Garoppolo. Atlanta would be a great fit for him if Matt Ryan goes elsewhere. Again, if I actually the idea of him to Washington though would be a very intriguing one, just because of what he'd be able to do with Terry McLaurin and all those guys. That'd be a really nice quarterback situation for him. The reason I was kind of saying, at least I think the reason people are saying that is because in terms of trades, I guess the Pats are the only team that were really, giving the 49ers any calls about him. There's a chance Jimmy Garoppolo could be released and that could happen. And then there's still a chance that, Trey Lance, a lot of people do see him as a project type quarterback that, could explode like a Pat Mahomes in year 2. So they might try to keep Jimmy Garoppolo, they might try to keep Jimmy Garoppolo on the team, use him as like an Alex Smith type mentor, and then get Trey Lance good to go. So you could have one more year of Jimmy G in the Bay or in San Francisco. My apologies. But yeah.
Well, I think that's the other thing too. Jimmy G robbed San Francisco. I don't think it's worth that 9-figure deal. But if you get Jimmy G on a cheaper contract, we'll see where he goes. Cam Newton left Carolina, where he took them to a Super Bowl, won an MVP. Yeah. He left hurt, bruised. Nobody believed in him. It's not exactly that he's lived up to a contract, but he got a smaller contract with New England, and he got brought back for year 2. I don't know if Jimmy G is ever going to hoist a Lombardi trophy in his own right. I don't know if Jimmy G is ever going to get an MVP vote or make a Pro Bowl, but I do think that with a smaller contract, in the next few years, he could be good enough to start for another club. It's just a matter of who has an opening, where he can go, and what he's willing to settle for.
Absolutely. So, you had mentioned Chicago as a possible destination for him to possibly mentor Justin Fields. That was another big story we wanted to cover on tonight's show. The Bears traded up. People were trying to figure, were the Pats going to take Mac Jones or Justin Fields if they fell to him? The Bears pretty much answered that question as soon as they traded up to I believe it was the 11 overall pick and selected Fields. For a long time, Chicago, really has never had a franchise quarterback. You would obviously know, as they are your arch rivals. And frankly, it's been a pretty nice rivalry. Even Jim McMahon now has come out and has basically said that the Packers are the best organization he's ever played for, and that the Bears just ruin quarterbacks. That's where quarterbacks go to die. Hopefully Justin Fields. You're not hoping for it necessarily, but hopefully Justin Fields can break the mold of both Chicago having a franchise quarterback and also Ohio State quarterbacks in the NFL. Lately, they just haven't worked out. You think of Cardale Jones, JT Barrett, Dwayne Haskins, and on a short list at least. Dwayne Haskins, we'll still see how he does. Possibly, I believe he's with Pittsburgh now, so we'll see how he does there. So there are some interesting things that could go on there, but just in general, though, what are your thoughts on Fields to Chicago?
We got to see how it goes. I think that saying that an Ohio State quarterback isn't going to succeed solely because they are an Ohio State quarterback, I don't think that's a smart thing to say. I think with Dwayne Haskins, too, a lot more of his problems are with character than it actually is with his play. Yeah. So we'll see how Justin Fields goes. What I'm surprised about is that all these people are complaining about Ryan Pace, and all these people are complaining about Matt Nagy, and they're staying. If your problem, Jim McMahon said Chicago doesn't know how to develop quarterbacks.
Yeah.
That can change if you get a better coach in. I'm surprised that they're staying with a guy who's been fairly stagnant, who, as underrated as I think Mitch Trubisky is, obviously did not develop Mitch Trubisky to the extent that Chicago wanted him to.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that they're keeping an old coaching regime that hasn't seen the success that they wanted when they're hoping that this guy can be the new franchise quarterback for 10, 15, 20 years to come, can take over Aaron Rodgers as the king of the North, can compete with Jared Goff and Kirk Cousins. I'm surprised that they're going to try to do that, at least in year one, with Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace at the helm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, another thing I didn't realize about Justin Fields too. I mean, obviously, obviously, thank God, it looks like it's kind of like it's a situation that solved itself. But when they were talking about Justin Fields, I didn't realize that he actually had epilepsy as a medical issue. I didn't realize that going to the draft. I'm surprised that didn't become a larger story going to the draft. From what I've heard, it's something that he relatively has under control. I guess he's gone vegan. I guess he's made some of the right choices in his life in terms of diet and just like taking care of himself. But I'm surprised that didn't become like a larger storyline going into the draft.
Well, it was a non-issue when he played in college.
Mm-hmm.
More of the differences between playing in college and playing in the NFL are your teammates and the opposition are better. There's no difference with cameras flashing in the stands. There's no difference with getting hit, still getting pounded. So if it's a non-issue in college, it could very well become prevalent in the NFL, but I don't think it's a concern that all of a sudden, because he's in the NFL, epilepsy is an issue. If it didn't stop Ohio State from recruiting him, I'm not terribly surprised that it didn't stop the Chicago Bears from drafting him.
Yeah, and I'm glad about that too. I hope that it never causes him an issue in the NFL. And from what I can tell, it doesn't look like it would. I'm just surprised that didn't become a bigger storyline going into the draft. With the Justin Fields situation, with Justin Fields though now going off to Chicago, it's very obvious that this is Matt Nagy and the guys just holding on for dear life. They know that if this doesn't work out, probably by Thanksgiving they're out. They know that this is probably their last shot. Just the way things have gone lately there. It does kind of look like a last second move, especially after going to get a guy like Andy Dalton free agency. They saw this move. They traded a boatload of picks to get Justin Fields. So I think this is kind of in my opinion, it looks like it's, that desperation heave saying, hey, we got to go for it here. This is our jobs on the line. We might get fired anyways. We're going to go for it.
Well, and that's what I think is the difference between a win-now situation and a desperation situation. A win-now situation is, let's try to keep Aaron Rodgers for the next year or two, and let's add all-pro wide receiver to take the balls from him. A desperation situation is, let's sign Andy Dalton to a $10 million contract and draft a quarterback for the future and hope that combination can somehow overtake Aaron Rodgers, because as of right now, Aaron Rodgers is still there. If you take away Aaron Rodgers, you still have to beat Kirk Cousins and the Vikings. And if you take away them, some people are saying the Lions might be dangerous this year. I don't know how much I believe that, but let's not act like the NFC North is a cakewalk. And you're not just going to waltz into first place and a new contract with an unproven rookie, a not battle-tested rookie, and Andy Dalton there to mentor him. That's a desperation move. And as much as I question Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace staying in their positions, I also question this move. Then again, questioning this move goes kind of hand in hand with questioning why Ryan Pace is still there.
And just questioning the Chicago Bears in general. I was thinking back on it, and I was like, why does this move seem so similar? And I guess there was a more, and now looking back on it, there was a more extreme version of it in 2017 when the Bears went out and they they signed Mike Glennon to a $45 million contract and proceeded to then go out and draft Mitchell Trubisky, very high up when people thought that he should have fallen, a little bit further into the draft. So it does kind of remind me of that whole situation. The Bears, it does look like the Bears are going for broke. I would agree with you that this is a little bit more of a desperation move here. And I, personally, I know they're your rival team, but I wish him the best and hoping that he can break out. In terms of, also in NFL news, Trey Lance, we were trying to figure out what the 49ers were going to do with that number 3 overall pick. The number 1 and 2 picks were locks going into the draft. And, I was sitting down watching the draft, and my dad and I even said it when it came up to the pick, and we said, like, hey, this is the pick of the draft. Like, this is going to be like, this is like the selection everyone's trying to see, like who's going where is like, and like it pretty much was the pick that was going to dictate the draft going forward. Eventually the 49ers decided that they were going to go with Trey Lance out of North Dakota State, and Mac Jones ended up falling to the Patriots at 15. I'm very grateful for that. We did get a quarterback. What were your thoughts when you saw the move?
I was surprised. I'd heard Mac Jones be linked to San Francisco. I thought that's the way they were going to go. But even then, I would have taken Justin Fields over Trey Lance. Trey Lance, admittedly, is the quarterback in this draft that I know the least about.
And I think, and you're not alone in that. And you're not alone in that. Like, no one does.
And I'm surprised. I would have thought that it would have been between Fields and Jones. I wouldn't have been terribly surprised to see either of them. Trey Lance, obviously, rightfully so, a first-round pick. I'm very surprised overall. I'm very surprised that he went before either of those two guys. We'll see if it ends up being like a Smith and Rodgers thing in 2005 or a Trubisky Mahomes thing in 2018, or we'll see if it works out for him. And it'll be interesting to see how he competes with Jimmy Garoppolo. Maybe they keep him as a mentor and hope that pushes them over the edge.
And I'm assuming you're also surprised at the price the 49ers paid to go and get up there to get him. Apparently, from what I'm hearing, or at least what I was hearing, Kyle Shanahan and Mike Lynch, I believe it is, and all the guys out there in San Francisco, apparently, like, when they had moved up for the 3 overall pick, the rumors of getting Mac Jones were starting to swirl in, but I guess they had been zeroed in on Trey Lance once they made the move. And they basically just decided, why would we go out and correct these if it might just serve as an advantage. So apparently, according to the Niners, they kind of just threw everybody for a loop and just had everybody scratching their heads, thinking, why are you going to move up all this way for Mac Jones? Why are you going to do all this? When in reality, apparently Trey Lance was their guy all along. Still it was a very shocking trade when it happened. All in all, very crazy.
Yeah. And I guess we'll never know, but I wonder if that made a difference with where Mac Jones fell, where Justin Fields fell.
Yeah.
I mean, teams have their plan, and you have intel, but if they misled so many people on who they were going to draft at 3 with quarterback position, that screws up the rest of the draft for a lot of people. And teams that tend to draft quarterbacks are teams that are hoping they can start to be on the up and up. You could potentially set a team back 5 or 6 years if you misdirect them that well. So I don't question them trying to misdirect people if that's where the rumors were going. I was surprised to see it myself, but let's see if it works out for them.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely threw a lot of people for a loop. I'll be excited. I'm definitely gonna be excited to see how that works out. But finally, in NFL news, the NFL's old golden boy, literally the son of God himself, Tim Tebow, reportedly wants to return to the NFL as a tight end. Apparently he tried out for the position with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he wants to really go there and wants to revive his NFL career. His attempt at Major League Baseball fell apart, and he wants to get back in the game in some aspect. Frankly, I'm all for it. I mean, a lot of people were saying that this was going to be how Tim Tebow extended his NFL career, back when he was playing. I remember when the Pats brought him in, and I was hoping they'd use him in that sort of a format. I was hoping that, we'd be the type of team to be going for 2-point conversions with him every single time, and, use him in rush plays, do different things like that, get both him and Brady out there in the same at the same time. But at the end of that preseason, we decided to keep Ryan Mallett instead. And I remember just being so pissed that we kept Ryan Mallett over Tim Tebow. I was like, what are we doing? And, Tebow never played another professional game again. So, again, the Pats probably knew what they were doing in the first place. I mean, I'm not going to ever question that, but this is a very interesting move. I'd love to see Tim Tebow back in the NFL doing his thing. What do you think?
They say that a good baseball player is a 5-tool player, that you can hit for average, hit for power, run fast, field well, and I don't really remember the third one. He can run fast and he can field well, and he obviously can't hit, so he realized that. He went back to football.
Yeah.
I'm surprised. He won a Heisman at Florida or Florida State? Florida,
yeah.
As a quarterback. He went to the NFL as a quarterback, and his he won a playoff game.
Yeah.
His career looked very normal, and I don't know if anybody really understands why he went with the career path that he did. Obviously, baseball didn't work out. He has better connections. He has better success. He has a better legacy and reputation in the NFL, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
As a tight end, we'll see what happens. I think part of what he has going against him is the fact that he's 33 years old already and he's never played an NFL down as a tight end. But if he gets a workout and he impresses Urban Meyer enough, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, to impress Urban Meyer for playing the position, I'm not expecting him to be like a Rob Gronkowski pass catching machine, but but if he's able to get down there and do some blocking, maybe get him in some wildcat plays too with Trevor Lawrence in that offense. Have some really interesting things going on there. I'd love to see it. To see Tim Tebow back on an NFL field, I would love to. I'd love to see that again. It would be so entertaining. Great TV. But before we do go down to the wire, I obviously thank you for coming on to cover everything going on NFL wise. I do want to shift over to MLB really quick because I know that we'll finally be able to cover a team that both you and I actually do like together, and that is the Boston Red Sox. They've been off to a surprisingly good start this season. The Section 10 podcast for anyone who doesn't know was projecting that they would go 17-10 on the season so far. I believe that prediction could come true tonight if they get a win. So there is hope that that a Boston Red Sox podcast from Barstool Sports could accurately predict the Red Sox start to the season. It'd be great to see. But what do you think about the Red Sox season so far, man?
Oh, it's been great, hasn't it?
I've loved it every second.
I was laughed at in New York for saying that I thought the team could go 500, and by that I meant I thought that they could win 80 games.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we're on pace for 90 something. We're first in the East. The Yankees are last. Nobody saw that coming.
Yeah.
I remember Kike Hernandez saying in an interview right before the season started, listen, we got some good guys. We have Erod coming back. Nick Pivetta can surprise people. The offense in 2019 was great. JD Martinez is an MVP candidate. Xander Bogaerts is an MVP candidate. Rafi Devers is an MVP candidate.
There you go.
Verdugo is becoming the golden boy in Boston.
Yeah.
And Sale could be coming back in July. If that team is in competition come July, they can make a run. And I didn't believe it when I heard it. But they're 17-10. If they keep this up for another month or two, they get their old ace back, and who knows?
Anything can happen.
Anything can happen. We might be seeing October baseball in Fenway again this year, way sooner than we thought.
Yeah, and with full capacity coming back August 1st. You bet as soon as I can be back in Fenway Park, I'm going to be there. It is going to be an electric scene. Alex Verdugo, like you said, man, has become one of my favorite players on the Red Sox. I love what he's doing. I love what he's doing for us, man. With the amount of passion that he plays with, that he plays the game with, it's something that I really like seeing out of a Red Sox guy. He really wants to be in Boston, which is something that I'm happy about. I know Mookie did too. And obviously the money, with and bringing in Heim obviously kind of threw a wrench into that whole thing. I'm hoping that we could keep Verdugo around for a long time if he produces like this. But I am really hopeful for this Red Sox team. I hope that, injuries don't bog them down. I'm hoping that Sale can come back in and be the punch that we're looking for to really get us over the hurdle and get us back into October. I'd love to see it. We're I think number 4 in the power rankings, which is amazing to see. I was not expecting to be, anywhere close to the top 10 this season. Especially after the way we performed against the Orioles at the start of this year. But that is now a long time ago. We are now, on an amazing roll. And I cannot wait to see what they do the rest of this year. I'm going to be covering them, all throughout the summer. It's going to be an amazing time to watch baseball.
Oh, I think it's great.
Mm-hmm.
I think Alex Verdugo in particular, not just the fact that the guy plays with passion. The guy loves being in Boston. He gets up out of his chair to bear hug David Ortiz. He just loves being there. He's great for the clubhouse. My girlfriend's favorite player for a long time was Brock Holt. This guy is Brock Holt, who can hit.
Mm-hmm.
And he could be a catalyst for a team that has fans coming back and are rejuvenated. Nobody watched the Red Sox last year. They were hard to watch. Section 10.
Yeah.
they would constantly say it's worse than 2012. 2012 was unlikable. 2020 was unwatchable. Now you got fans back. You got a team playing with heart, and you got a team winning, and that could be an electric combination in the dog days when you're running down to the magic number.
Mm-hmm.
And we got a young core. Let's see if we can keep it up a few more years.
Yeah. And then also in MLB news, I wanted to get your opinion on this because I know you think so strongly and you have such a love for them. But I don't know what it's been, man. For some reason, ever since, obviously there's been a human element to the game as long as it's been played, because we've had umpires and there's been manual calls of the game. Replay is a very new thing to baseball, came over in 2014. But for whatever it is, man, ever since replay has gotten here, somehow, some way, I feel like the umpires have gotten worse across Major League Baseball, and 2021 seems to, it seems to be more apparent than ever. MLB Trash Talkers, a Instagram page that we follow, kind of post some updates about this, and they posted just an egregious call, between the Milwaukee Brewers and the Miami Marlins, where a pitcher was going to flip a ball to first base, and he was just standing there, and the runner took off, and he was on the infield grass, so he was almost kind of more inside, even though you can establish your own lane. And the umpire decides to say that it was obstruction on the pitcher, even though he was not obstructing the base whatsoever. And it there are just some it looks like umps are now just looking for calls to make. Just the strike zones in general seems like they it seems like they've kind of been just, getting worse and worse. It's just been terrible to watch.
The only bright side of umpires this year is that Angel Hernandez lost his case with the MLB.
Thank God.
I've been for a long time, my opinions on umpires.
Yeah.
I am not exactly an umpire's best friend, but I for a long time have said that they're an integral part of the game. We don't want automatic strike zone. Human error is part of the game. You can go back all the way back to the $30,000 muff 100 years ago in the World Series. That literally won a World Series for the opposition. Human error is part of the game. The umpires as well. With that being said, it almost seems like they want an automatic strike zone the way they're umpiring. I think a better remedy to this could either be, there are some people that want umpires fined. I think that it would be equal treatment to Major League Baseball players, but Major League Baseball players Mike Trout signed a $430 million contract. An umpire makes a lot of money, but $400,000 versus $400 million isn't the same thing.
Yeah. But
I believe it's in Japan, they'll demote umpires if they're bad enough. And players are all subject to that same penalty. So if you want to go severe enough, I would not be against that. I think the worst case scenario, you start demoting guys who are becoming in detriment to games. Best case scenario, it lights a fire under the umpires' asses, and they start calling better games, being more worried about calling the correct call. They won't start reaching for calls like what we saw in the Brewers game the other day. It can't keep happening like this.
Yeah, no.
Human important part of the game, but this can't keep happening, especially with gambling coming up and becoming more and more prominent. You can't play with guys' livelihoods. You can't play with people's bets because you have an ego or you saw it wrong or you didn't do your job. It's too important to just screw up and not fix anything.
No, I completely agree with you. And I don't know. It's just the fact that, here's the thing. Like, some people would I guess the argument could be like, well, if you were to suspend the umpires or not suspend, but fine the umpires, then they might go on strike and you have to deal with replacement umpires. But I'm just like, well, they're already officiating the game like replacement umpires. So I don't really know what the detriment would really be at this point.
Yeah, it seems like maybe it's because of less press, but it seems like we never really see AAA or AA umps getting lit up for bad calls. It seems like we never see umpires in the College World Series getting lit up for bad calls. Maybe it's because of less publicity. That could very well.
No, that could very well be a part of it.
If you want to play at the top level, you have to play well. And if you don't, you're going to get sent down. Yeah. Why is it any different?
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you there. And I think that, I think frankly, like the whole like umpires union and stuff like that, they'll kind of like, they'll kind of like pitch a fit about it, saying like, hey, I'm being treated unfairly. I made it to the major leagues. I deserve this. But frankly, you should be doing better. And, it like you're saying, it looks like they're trying to almost like get an automatic strike zone at this point with the way that they're with how poorly they're managing the game. It's just been so abhorrent just to see. I mean, it's been ridiculous.
Oh, I agree entirely.
Yeah.
Something's got to change. What exactly you need to have a conversation about, but you can't stop putting up that conversation. It's got to happen this offseason.
No, something definitely has to happen this offseason. I don't know if that's going to happen through expanding replay, which, frankly could make it worse because we saw what adding replay in the first place did. But, I mean, I was very, anti-automatic strike zone before because I do like some element to it. But I mean, if it's going to get to the point where it's at, and you can still maybe have a guy behind home plate, then maybe you get there. I don't like the idea of, I don't like, too many of these new age, baseball, kind of fixes to maybe get pace of play right and get all these other things right. If you have to do the whole Doppler radar thing, if it means, having a more accurate game, then maybe I'm starting to get on board with it just because of how badly these umps are doing it. I know that you're very anti-pitch clock though.
Yes.
Yeah.
I pitched in high school. I pitched all right. I feel like I was the definition of good, not great. I got outs. I wasn't overpowering. I did not throw the ball fast. If I got you out, I threw it by pitching your junk, screwing up your timing, anything like that. And with screwing up your timing, it goes more than just, breaking ball or change up
yeah.
fastball. It also goes along with, I might quick pitch you this at bat. If I want more effect on the next pitch, I'm going to sit and wait a few seconds. I'm going to throw off your timing. Either you're going to call timeout or I'm going to get it by you because you're not ready for the pitch. And if you institute a pitch clock, it starts to interfere with that method of the game, and I would not have been near as okay of a pitcher as I was in high school if I had a pitch clock speeding me up the entire game. It just would have taken out the entire effectiveness of my method.
Yeah, and I know a lot of that. I know a lot of your success, with holding the ball and doing some other things like that on the mound, kind of came when there were runners on base. Obviously, holding guys on. I mean, I remember talking about your just insane pickoff move that you'd always mess around with us on varsity with. But just in general though, would the idea of a pitch clock while no one's on base and you're in a windup, would that be something you'd entertain, or is that still something that you're not really looking at right now?
I'm still not that much of a fan of it. Again, it's not just holding guys on. It's screwing up your timing. If you're going to get on your front foot because you weren't ready for my pitch, being as early or as late as it was, that was a huge part of my game. But also, the NFL has 30 or 40 seconds between plays. Nobody's complaining that that's boring or takes too long.
Yeah.
And the people that are watching it aren't complaining that it's boring or taking too long. And the people who aren't watching it aren't going to start watching because you start making doubleheaders 7 innings instead of 9.
Yeah,
you're watching the first 7, you're not going to watch the last 2 anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the incessant want to speed up the game is kind of unfounded because you have another sport that's thriving and they take twice as long between plays. You got a good thing going for you. Baseball's been dying for over 100 years, and yet we never seem to actually die.
Yeah.
So I think messing with the game was going to mess with the true fans, and that's who you have to worry about losing.
Yeah, that the 7-inning doubleheaders was something else that I wasn't planning on talking about, but like just as of last week, Madison Bumgarner had 7 no-hit innings, but it did not count as a no-hitter because you only played because they only played 7. It was only a 7-inning game, even though that's what the standard was for the start of the game. A lot of people were trying to figure out, should that be a no-hitter or not? I don't think it should be, but I think the fact that he doesn't have the chance to go out there and get those 2 other innings is what is disgraceful in general. So no, do I think it should have counted as a no-hitter? No, I don't. But frankly, I think that he should have been at least able to go and get it, which, is part of the reason that I'm not a big fan of the 7 innings, because, if you're going to have guys going out there, like guys are going out there and they're pitching legit performances. Like these stats like matter overall in baseball history. So if you have a guy like Madison Bumgarner going out there and he's going to go and he's going to have 7 no-hit innings, or even a Clayton Kershaw, say he goes out there and he pitches a perfect game through 7. I mean, like though you're not gonna be able to add on those 2 extra innings and tell those guys, hey, we're gonna play this one out just for the history of it. You established at the start of the game, hey, we're doing 7 innings, and I don't know, just the fact that like it's already starting to show some issues with it, because historical events are now being we're getting completely robbed of them in general.
I agree and I disagree.
Yeah,
absolutely, that should be a no-hitter.
You think so?
The guy went out and he did as much as he could have for as long as he was allowed to. He wasn't yanked because of a manager. He wasn't pulled because of fatigue. He started the game and he finished the game.
Yeah.
That's a no-hitter. But for that exact reason, the fact that you're playing anything less than 9 innings is an atrocity, and it makes 0 sense.
Yeah.
I don't understand that. The NFL doesn't stop after the 3rd quarter. Neither does the NBA or the NHL. The NFL, the NBA, and the NHL also don't start in a shootout or with a free throw contest or with an extra guy in the field. There's no advantage. And all of a sudden, baseball is starting to do, we need to shorten games. We need to add a runner on base to start extra innings. It's tampering with a game that doesn't need to be tampered with. It's something that no other sport is doing, and it's not addressing any problems. It's just creating more problems with the existing fan base, the fan base that has kept a dying sport thriving for a century.
Yeah. You're talking about additional rules that like the NFL, like in NBA, like aren't necessarily doing to change the game. I don't know if you saw this, but there was like a spring game. I forget between what teams, but instead of doing a coin toss, they did a snapper duel where they had the long snappers line up on the 35s of each line, and they were just continuously snapping footballs until they hit one of the other people with it, and the person who hit it could decide what they did with the ball. I think that actually would be an awesome thing to add to the NFL over a coin toss. That actually would be kind of fun. But with the adding of runners on base to start extra innings, that is a rule that I'm also very against. I think that it's just been something that it just seems so corny. And here's the thing, for the idea of doing it in 2020, I actually was for it because I mean, frankly, I wasn't that for it, but I could understand it because of the idea of COVID being at where it was, and just saying like, hey, we got to get these guys off. We got to get these guys on and off the field as quick as we can. If this is a way we can do it, let's do it. And I was like, okay, let's do that. Now that it's starting to become a mainstream thing in baseball, and it looks like they're going to try to like make it stay, I am not the biggest fan of it whatsoever.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a traditionalist.
Yeah, same here.
On it. I don't like seeing change to the game that I've played for 20 years and the game that's been played for 150.
Yeah,
I don't see a need for it. I think it's hurting the fan base, and I think it's hurting the game. And in certain instances, I think it's hurting the integrity of the game, like the fact that Madison Bumgarner has still officially yet to throw a no-hitter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's a travesty to him and to the sport.
Yeah, no. So that's why, and again, like those changes so far, I mean, people have been trying to talk about the universal DH, which surprisingly, of all the rules that people were in favor of, I mean, I'm still kind of anti universal DH, but in all the rules that, a lot of like mainstream baseball fans were fans of, that was the one that they didn't bring back, but they brought back the runner on second base where, again, I'm very anti universal DH, but in terms of changing the game, you're technically not changing it that much as, I mean, the DH has, been here since 75, but the rules of the game aren't necessarily changing as much if that had stayed, as opposed with all these other rules.
I'm not a fan of the universal DH either.
Yeah.
I think it's very cool that there is a difference between the AL and the NL. That's something that doesn't happen in any other sport. But I would be more willing to forego that rule and compromise to get rid of all the other rules. Because as much as I do like seeing pitchers at bat, I think Jacob deGrom has proven anybody who says that pitchers can't hit wrong. I think Bartolo Colon has proven anybody that says the pitchers can't hit with grace wrong. But I would be willing to forego pitchers batting. That doesn't change the game near as much as any of these other rules have. And if we need to compromise at some point, I'd be willing to stop there. Yeah, I think that's a lesser evil than everything else.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you over, compromising all those other rules. I think that would be something that, again, I like the differences between leagues, but if that's what it would, I mean, you know, I just wish that, like if you had to do it maybe in the regular season, you do it, and maybe in the postseason you have those differences, or you have the differences in the regular season, and then the postseason you have universal DH, and you have that sort of a maybe flip to it. I may be willing to make that sort of a compromise, but absolutely to get rid of some of these other terrible rules, I'd be willing to make a compromise of that type of that sort.
Yeah, I agree. There are far worse things to worry about. I'd be willing to go without that.
Yeah. But with that being said, it is currently 5:22. I know that's not important for you guys, but it is officially time to say that we are down to the wire, which means that we're going to go through everything we talked about in this episode. We will let you guys get started on your weekend. First of all, Pat, thank you so much for coming on to the show again, man. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate you giving your Packers insight.
Thanks for having me. I love talking about the Packers.
Yeah. So obviously we started off talking about night one of the NFL draft, fans being back in person, sitting in Roger Goodell's really beat up old lazy boy. I know we didn't talk about it too much in detail, but I'll let you just say a quick couple words. I mean, I could understand if it was like a throne or something cool like that, but like it literally was just like some chair that you could find in any old basement.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if it had been like, I don't know, like some like a throne or like this really cool chair that like was a nice recliner, it was like something like that, I could understand it. But he literally just said, yeah, it's the chair from the draft last year. Like, yeah, it's just this old beat up leather chair that I've probably had like since 1992. I've had it in my basement since forever. Yeah. I'm just like,
he's a man of the people. And besides, the rest of the draft had more flair. That's what we care about.
Absolutely. So, and we'll get into that in just a second. Obviously, we talked about Aaron Rodgers wanting out of Green Bay. Adam Schefter broke the news. Apparently, it's more than just a simple contract dispute. Packers GM Brian Gutekunst did say that Rodgers will not be traded, but we'll have to see how that goes. We talked about whether this relationship between them could be repaired and what could happen for Rodgers going forward. We talked about whether we had faith in Jordan Love as a quarterback going forward. And Green Bay selecting cornerback Eric Stokes out of Georgia, yet another defensive player they've taken the draft in the first round. We talked about the New England Patriots staying pat at number 15 overall and taking Alabama quarterback Mac Jones, who fell to them after the 49ers took Trey Lance. We talked about what is next for Jimmy Garoppolo, as the Pats seem to have a solution at quarterback. We talked about the Bears trading up for Justin Fields, and hopefully trying to end their drought of non-franchise quarterbacks and trying to finally get a guy in there. We talked about Trey Lance going number 3 overall to the 49ers after reports after the 49ers apparently just decided not to correct reports about them being interested in Mac Jones. We talked about Tim Tebow trying out for the NFL as a tight end. Apparently he wants to go to the Jaguars. In MLB news, we talked about our thoughts on the Red Sox this season, as well as atrocious calls by umpires. And additionally, we discussed some of the new rules around baseball, which we are not big fans of whatsoever. But from Down the Wire, I'm Brian Costa.
I'm Pat Edwards.
And we hope you guys have a great weekend. Take care, you guys.